Yeah. Hello and welcome to another magical Couch Talks, where this time we're not muted. Yes.
Sure.
We were experiencing some technical difficulties.
Right. Human error.
Get it right this time.
Ryeguy recently picked up World of Warcraft, the most recent expansion, which is...
Battle for Azeroth.
So how do you feel about that? Like, what are your feelings overall so far?
You know, I had actually picked it up towards the start of the expansion, and at a different point in life I was really busy, so I couldn't really give it as much thorough going over and exploring as I would have liked to.
Okay.
So at first I kind of was like, this is kind of cheesy cop-out, whatever. I'm actually really liking it this time around, now that I have time to actually sit down and thoroughly complete quests and go through and not just be
kind
like,
of enjoy
oh my
the
God,
story
I'm just trying
a
to
bit
get
more.
through this to power level to 120.
Yeah.
Trying to not get behind, because it's like, you know, I'm already behind, so what's the point in rushing to endgame?
Yeah, that's fair. So, alright, so what's the kind of the history of Battle for Azeroth? Like, what's happening? Like, what's our objective in this expansion?
I hate to be really lazy about it, but long story short, it's basically another Horde versus Alliance kind of scenario, with a little bit of Enzoth, one of the old gods, come back and screwing everything, and then everyone's all like, oh no, we have to put aside our differences and deal with this. So
Again.
Stereotypical kind of stuff like that.
Okay. So what's
But it's much more interesting than the short-term event. So
alright, what's Enzoth's whole deal then, since it sounds like he's kind of the focal point of
He's slowly getting his hand and touching the world and slowly corrupting miscellaneous leaders and figures. And I haven't gotten actually to the end game portion where it's explaining what's going on in Nyalotha yet. I'm still leveling through there, not necessarily leveling, but I'm questing through there because I've already hit 120 because they're coming out with the new Shadow whatever. Shadowlands, Shadow expansions.
One of the Shadow, yeah, like
there's plenty of those. There's Shadow Keep, Shadowlands, and Shadowbringers.
Shadowbringers, and I'm sure there's more. But...
So,
announced in the reverse order from what was just said.
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, it's just like I need to level because that new expansion's coming out and they're kind of giving people a little boost to get into the 120 earlier so that they can start doing the end game content. I hit 120 well before I finished the leveling zones for it, so I'm going back and making sure that I'm actually getting through there, and as I'm going through it slowly, because I've completed several of the raids through raid finders, but I've not actually completed the quests that are explaining why I'm in Nyalotha already.
Alright.
Which would be very helpful, like
for understanding
Queen
what the heck's going on
and all of that stuff. Yeah, it would be nice to have the context, so would like to see how that unravels. I'm currently creating crazy things with Wrathion, who's Deathwing's son.
Okay.
So he finally came back. Okay.
So what's changed
for a second time? Yeah.
What's changed in this expansion for you so far? Like as in like from the last time you played to now, I guess would be.
So in the previous expansion, I mean,
because I know you played at the beginning of the expansion, right?
I did.
Has anything changed since then?
Yeah, they didn't come out with the whole Enzoth kind of having his sway until later on, because that was kind of what they were building towards the end game content, as in like the final raid for the expansion.
Okay.
And so I didn't actually have any experience with the corruption gear that they're doing. So for context, some of the end game pieces of gear are corrupted by Enzoth, which the more corruption your character has gives you debuffs to the character depending on how, like, a tier system. So like the first one, if you have 1 point of corruption on your character, it has a chance to like slow your character randomly in combat.
Okay, that sounds obnoxious.
And then like 20, it gives you like your spells and abilities have a chance to trigger some sort of NPC character to come and give you debuffs and attack you. But the trade-off is you have this corruption gear that gives you these debuffs randomly, but it also gives you like crazy buffs. So like one of mine will have a random chance to give me like 800 critical strike or haste or something randomly. And the other thing you can do is certain parts of your gear. So like you're given a cape that will allow you to remove corruption from your character.
Okay.
And so you can kind of play like, well, I'll take up to the second tier, which just like randomly slows me. But I get to keep the corruption buff on me. Because like your cape will give you reduced corruption, and you have certain things within your Heart of Azeroth artifact for this expansion, which will also reduce your corruption. So it's like you can have 45 or 50 points of corruption gear on your character, but you can bring that back down to a lower tier worth of corruption penalties through miscellaneous armor and traits and stuff like that. So it's like you can play this fun trade-off game, or if you really just don't want to deal with it, they do have a mechanic in the game where you can actually get rid of the corruption on the piece of armor. So it's like you don't get the corruption, but you don't get the buff, so it's just a wash and turns it into normal whatever the corruption piece is.
Alright, that sounds kind of interesting.
So it's very interesting mechanic, and it's kind of fun because it's, you know, you gotta weigh the trade-off. Is the buff I'm gonna get from the piece actually worth the penalty I'm going to receive
whatever
from the corruption
bothersome thing
building
I'm
up
getting,
on you?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting, and I'm kind of a fan of it. That being said, I'm only have a handful of pieces and not a lot of variety, so it's kind of like I don't really know if it's worth it. I'm kind of keeping the pieces even though I get slight debuff, just because it boosts my armor level or item level for it.
Okay, so I guess with that we'll move into like, what are your thoughts? Like, what's the good? What's the bad?
I mean, the good is it's a new mechanic for them, kind of. I do like when I was a fan of the artifact in Legion, because it was like these artifacts were specific to everyone's class. You were receiving like the Scythe of Elune for druids, or Claws of Ursoc, or like if you were a Death Knight, you were reforging the shards of Shadowmourne and making your own.
Shadowmourne?
Sorry, Frostmourne. Shadowmourne was the D-Knight axe that you created out of it. But anyways, it was like these artifacts were specific to every class, so it wasn't like this blanket, everyone gets a Heart of Azeroth, and while you can customize it however you want, everyone has it. So it's not necessarily unique to classes or characters.
Yeah, well, I mean, my only complaint about the artifact equipment that I've seen in games like this, is at the end of the expansion, they effectively become useless.
True. That being said, it is nice to have the artifact be the neck piece, because it's not like a super fancy piece of gear. It's just your necklace. It offers a decent amount of stats and whatnot, but it's not like your weapons, where it's like you are forced to have those weapons forever. It's not like in raids where you can, especially for classes that dual wield the weapons, like you're just forced to have your weapons be this one thing through the entirety of the expansion. Whereas this expansion, since it's your necklace, you can go back to having like a wand and an offhand, or you can choose between having wand and offhand or staff, or you can have a little more customization there. Whereas it's just your artifact is this one piece of gear, and it's, you know, it's not super significant, so you don't have to be like, oh, I wish I could replace that with such and such. So
I guess for me, like, it's just kind of like, I kind of wish that those artifacts would carry forward into future expansions and stay relevant. But that's just kind of a me thing, I suppose.
True. It is nice that they did allow you to transmog your artifact appearance.
Yeah.
They finally allow you to transmog legendary gear, which I don't know why that was never always a thing. So now you see every rogue running around with Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, and all the mages love their Terragos's Rest and all the fun stuff. Obviously.
And there's a few people out there with the old version of Ashbringer, I'm sure, just all the time now.
So what are your thoughts on everything that's been talked about, Zil? I mean, I think you're the most hardened World of Warcraft player among us, so...
Despite not playing anymore?
Despite not playing anymore,
Yeah, but you played the OG.
It's true. I got to level 30. I don't even think I got that far. But anyway.
That's enough for the mount, which was what, 20?
I don't know anymore.
It was 30.
It was 30, yeah.
But I didn't buy them out because I didn't have the gold.
It's
Anyway,
expensive.
my problem with the artifact system was that it was, and it had kind of already been building up to this, so it's not the artifact system was like the tipping point. It's just a representation of this shift in the storytelling away from you are a hero to you are the hero, and that wasn't what I found interesting about that universe.
Okay, no, I super dig that point. That is very, very true, because like in Final Fantasy, you are the warrior of light.
But that's okay, because that's how it starts.
Yeah.
Like, you're an adventurer, but there's all this stuff leading up from the very beginning to you are the warrior of light. You are this person. You are... Spoilers that I will avoid because this isn't a Final Fantasy video, but you are like this person who is like very important to this world, and they start telling you that, like, I just went back through my last starting zone to do, which was Ul'dah, and they're like, from the very beginning, oh, you have like this weird special power, you're this special person, whereas World of Warcraft
has always mostly been
Yeah.
that you're just an adventurer guy, basically,
Yeah,
or girl, or whatever.
that was why the raids started out as 40 people. You're one of the 40 people who went in and did this thing. Like, yeah, you still went in and did this thing with 39 other people.
Yeah, because even by like Cataclysm, it does take that turn between, oh man, I'm helping the aspects, to like, the aspects wouldn't have been, spoiler alert, I don't know if I have to say this, for killing Deathwing. They couldn't have done it without you. You were needed for that.
Yeah.
And it's a you specifically thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I do agree that like that's kind of one of the things that originally drew me into World of Warcraft, is I like the idea of everybody being kind of like, not necessarily, you know, weak or anything, but like we're all out there like leveling up and getting better and like facing these challenges together. Whereas like some of the other MMOs, Final Fantasy does a pretty good job at not doing this actually, but like it would be really easy in Final Fantasy to be like, you are the hero, you don't need your allies, because that's kind of how they've written the story.
No, because I would say Ice Crown Citadel was kind of the end of that.
Yeah.
Wrath of the Lich King.
Cataclysm in general was a huge turning point for a lot of the way they wrote the game.
Well, because when you killed the Lich King, you go on this whole spiel about how he's like, thank you for bringing all of these people to me, and I'm going to use these champions.
Yeah.
It's like he's talking about, I'm taking your hardened elite group of people that made it to the Lich King, and I'm going to turn them into the worst scourge that's ever been seen. And it's even like in Ul'dah, you need all of your people, and it's talking about your basically little army going through and helping with this.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you start getting into the Deathwing, it's like, it's kind of like all or nothing. I would totally agree that Kata was where it kind of flipped.
Yeah, Ice Crown is, you go in there and the main characters, because you're not a main character, and I guess that's what I like, is it's a really interesting perspective that you don't get from most media, where the perspective of the story is not told from a character who is particularly important to the story. Like, anybody else could go in that character's slot up through Ice Crown Citadel. Everybody's like, champions. You are the champions, plural. You're a bunch of people who are really good at what you do, and you're helping me, main character,
King or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
whoever's leading the particular instance you're in, and then by the end of Cataclysm, it's Thrall's like, you there, you specifically, this one person.
Yeah, no, I actually never noticed that, and I think that's a really interesting.
No, and that's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Like it's really noticeable in Legion for sure, because it's like, if you really think about it, there's only one of supposed to be these artifacts in their existence, ignoring the fact that every class of everything has 50 million of them per character, because every character gets one. But from the story perspective, the main characters like Cenarius and all of them, they're giving this one artifact to you and being like, you are receiving this because it is you, instead of, you know, you didn't have that before, or you could potentially get the legendaries.
Yeah. I honestly can't tell which storytelling of the story I like more. I really like how Final Fantasy tells the story. Really like being the warrior of light, being the center of attention, because that's just how I am. But but also I kind of like the you know, being just one of the heroes, and I kind of super dig that. And it's a different. way to experience the story, and I do super dig that. Maybe that's one of the things that's actually kind of driven me away from is the change in the narrative. Perhaps. I don't know, because I still don't know why I can't pick World of Warcraft back up. I just can't see
And
it.
it also just plays very differently than it used to.
But
And
anyway,
also- yeah,
I think for now, let's finishing thoughts, everybody, because I would like to wrap this up.
I do just want to chip in because somebody's going to say it. The legendary system before the artifacts is different than the existing artifact system. You needed a group of people to acquire the legendary weapons, like Thunder Fury, and
I honestly can't remember any of the other ones either, but
yeah.
Twin Blades. Bazarov.
Yeah. And then, like, Ice Crown Citadel, you got one bag of goodies. That's really what it was a goodie bag, because they were like, what, you want more gear? You just finished the game. But here's a goodie bag. But it was multiple items, and you needed the whole group to get there, and you handed them out to the people who helped you along the way, or at least that was the intention. Lots of people didn't do that. But also, it was really interesting to me that they created Ashbringer, put it in the very beginning, like in the first raid, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
It's one of the rarest. The original. Or
Yeah.
Is it Ashbringer or is it Corrupt Ashbringer?
It
You
might be
remember?
corrupt. I don't
think
remember.
I think you could get the Corrupted because it was like green.
But yeah, it's in the old version of the floating citadel thing that I can't remember the name of now. And then decided, oh, we don't want to tell our story that way, and took it out. And then years later, we're like, you know what'd be cool is if we gave everybody an Ashbringer.
Max Ramus.
Yes, yes, the original version of Naxxramas. Not in Wrath, but the original release of it. You could get Ashbringer.
Where it floated over
And they
Northrend.
pulled that instance, and part of the reason, like not the whole reason, but one of the things that they really wanted to pull when they pulled that instance was the ability to get a weapon that was that central to the story.
Yeah. Do you have any finishing thoughts? Wrap up thoughts?
I'm just really curious to see what they do with Shadowlands.
Okay. Yeah, me too, actually. All right, guys.
Really
Well,
interesting.
yeah, no, I'm looking forward to Shadowlands. I'm interested to see what happens. That's all we have for you today on this. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and all that junk. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Have a magical day.